But we need to get rid of some things that people believe about WordPress. So we're going to go through some of these, and then we'll have some questions. So first myth tends to be you don't need a lot of skill to set up your site, get it running. I kind of equate it to brownies. You know, if you like brownies and you want to learn to make brownies, you can make brownies, or you can learn to make brownies deluxe, right? They're both brownies, but there's a lot going on in that other brownie. And although that's a simplified way of looking at it, it's very true about WordPress. Many times you'll see people use the Lego analogy with WordPress. Everybody knows what Legos, the little building blocks are, and you know, you could stack things on it and stack things on it. I look at it as the Lego that got too big. You know, it has so much attached to it, you can go a little too far. What we're going to do is avoid going too far with the wrong components. We're going to talk about that. So one of the things that, you know, why isn't it easy? Because these things are what are important. SEO, content, they don't migrate automatically and perfectly from a legacy site or from somebody's copydex or database without some help along the way. This is where the person who is in charge of your aesthetics and your content need to have a good understanding of what they're going to be presenting with WordPress. Otherwise, you're going to have things that look just as bad as any poorly built website without WordPress. In addition to the design and the visual elements, there's, you know, the need to be able to scale to the complexity of your needs and your site needs is all going to be something that needs to be managed and not just let go. Now, while that's about designing a site, maintaining a site and skill levels is another one that I always try to talk with clients about, and it comes down to an investment. I say it's the hard work because it's work that needs to be passed along, and in many cases the reason that WordPress was selected is because some of the editing and input is going to be passed along to a lower cost per hour person, or you don't have that depth of staff and it's one more thing thrown upon the plate of the person to do, and this is supposed to be an easier way to manage it. It can be with the right training, and the key elements are to get the skills, invest in the training, and then commit time to keeping up the website. And when I talk about keeping up your website, it's keeping up the skills of the operators, keeping up your security measures, and also keeping up your updates so that everything keeps staying together, that Lego that stays together, that Lego sculpture. So most of us have already seen this. We're working with WordPress, but really, what would you rather be working with? Learning how to work with a dashboard that's somewhat like this, or what I learned when I started HTML, which was to learn to code lines of text and then imagine what it was going to look like. In a strange way, it was fun for me, but I realized not everybody shared that fun. This is your standard page editing screen, and for the benefit of the gentleman, we were talking about the ways that you can preview what your page is going to start looking like. Up here, there are two ways of looking at it: visual editor or text editor. If you toggle between those, you either get straight text and then code all around it, or something a little more visual that will cue you to your heads, subheads, and items like that. Although I assure you it's not 100% accurate. It's not complete WYSIWYG. So the option would be to let someone edit a page this way for a product update, or learn to use Sublime Text 2, which is actually a code editing program I use. It's a very great one for people that really want to get into code, but I don't recommend it to most people who really want to be doing other things with their time. Or if you're managing a blog, a standard blog look of WordPress versus Dreamweaver. And I've got to tell you, I've been working with Adobe since they started with their products. I learned Dreamweaver. I abandoned it years ago because there were some deficiencies with it, and I went to learning code as a designer. That was a decision I made, and I was very glad I did it. I understand why people stick with it, but there still are problems with Dreamweaver, and so when people start wanting to get serious about websites, I always recommend that they have the person that's going to do that invest the time rather than learning Dreamweaver through courses. I actually suggest that they invest the time in having someone learn code if they're going to have that person trained to that level. It's going to cost the same thing for the training. Get them into the code, and that way they'll become better developers. So the other myth is that one WordPress theme aesthetically might look different than another, but they all kind of have similar guts and feature sets. More importantly than that, because we know that some themes have a lot of page layouts and others just have a few, the myth that they're QC'd to a consistent standard, their quality level is high enough. Well, there is a problem there. WordPress.org does a very good job in vetting any theme that they might host and offer up off their site. But not all other sites that offer WordPress themes, whether it be free or premium, pass that same standard of coding. They can function within WordPress, but they're not built to this efficiency level in all cases. That's why they don't all appear within WordPress.org. Yes? A good question. So whether you're building it in WordPress.com or WordPress.org, are they the same? They are both vetted to the same level. There are issues with hosting a site on WordPress.com that we need to be aware of, and that's about transportability when we decide we want to move on from WordPress.com. It's sort of the bad that happens that no one told us about, and we'll have a slide on that later. 24/7 support. If you've ever tried to get a question answered on a theme, most of the time you don't have a phone number to call. Okay, and it's not because these people are roaming nomads living in the back of VW microbuses, and maybe picking up email. It's that a lot of developers are smaller operations, and that's where a good theme clearinghouse or repository is a good thing, because they act as an intermediary and they keep very good records on support logs, and they probably have the answer to your question. Then they tend to be very responsive. I've been very happily surprised. But you do get what you pay for the most part. There are over 10,000 themes available. I think the number's actually higher than that, but I didn't want to quote something that was an exaggeration. And there are definitely on WordPress.org, you can get 2,700 free themes that you can use on any WordPress installation, because it is WordPress.org giving them to you. Now, I talked about the other places to get themes, and on this slide, which is in your deck, I shared the top 5 according to theme grade. That they tend to look at them from the standpoint of support, quality of code, and we'll talk about why that's important later, aesthetics, and features. And the places that people would want to look, should they want to revive or move on to a new WordPress site and start with a new theme, are these 5 organizations. There are many others, but there are also some dangers that you need to be aware of when you go to other places, especially when you go free. Earlier there was a question about WordPress.com and WordPress.org. I won't go into it too deeply, and I'm not going to bash anything, but many times we get involved in projects for small organizations, nonprofits I get involved in as well. And what I discover is that they've actually hosted their site on WordPress.com. And everything's running kind of nice, but then they want to be able to move on with where they're at. And they want to be able to maybe now migrate to another server, and maybe they want to add functionality like e-commerce because they're going to sell or fundraise or do something like that. This is where issues start coming up that were unanticipated. If a person is not aware, when you try and move off of a WordPress.com site that's hosted there, the theme may not be able to move off of WordPress.com. They literally have some themes within their theme feature set that you got for free, built your whole site around and everything like that, that cannot be moved and downloaded and hosted somewhere else. It's exclusive to them. What does that mean? I've lived through this with one client. It was a young lady who had a small lifestyle blog that I was helping her with. We had to find a similar theme outside of WordPress.com's repertoire. purchase and download that theme. First, we had to find one that held all the similar feature sets, and at that point, we were looking for more. And then we had to migrate the site over, which we did through the use of plugins and other things to help us smooth the process along the way. But none of us want to have to go through that if we can avoid it. So if the only reason someone is going to WordPress.com for hosting is because it seems like an okay idea, be aware of this. When you buy in for a long time with WordPress.com. And that's why I put the very bad idea mark up there. Never for a word business site need. I also want to extend that to landing page. Sometimes you'll have a specialty site, promotional site that may not be your core brand site. That's where these additional sites might need hosting, and do not do them at WordPress.com. Now, WordPress.org. The reason I wanted to talk about the two of these is that's your resource site. That is the holy grail go-to site to get all the info that you want and a lot of very cool stuff. WordPress is associated with a company called Automatic, with M-A-T-T is in the middle of the name, and that's for its founder, Matt Mullen. I think it's Matt Mullenweg. I want to call him Matt Mullenberg, thinking of Zuckerberg. Matt Mullenweg is one of the founders and credited people that helped come up with WordPress way back. And Automatic still has its culture and still supports WordPress, and WordPress.org is run by them as well as a separate foundation. It is an open source place where people share ideas, new code information, and not only can you download vetted themes and plugins that have passed muster with them to be approved on their site for download, but you can also access the WordPress Codex, which it makes for riveting reading if you really want to just fall asleep at night. But actually the WordPress Codex has pretty much every standard set up so that when a person starts learning to modify WordPress websites or portions of a website, all the proper naming conventions are there. It's very well thought out, very complete, and very seriously taken. So for those people that will eventually go hands-on within your organizations, that is always a place to go. That is the core to originally go back to and look for your best information. When you get something from WordPress.org, you're downloading it, and then you're responsible for installing it with your web host. They don't do any hosting there. Okay, so just a little bit about that. I hope that was useful because there's a lot of confusion between the two. Yes. Mm-hmm. That is the process. Then the question was, if a client wants to now move a site onto the WordPress platform. We call it the WordPress platform, the software backbone of it all. Can we go to WordPress.org and download the software? And yes, that's the process. You download it from there onto your computer, your desktop, and then you can either install it a couple of different ways. And it's not within our deck because it sort of gets into under the hood, if you will. But a couple of ways to go so that you can start developing that site is, rather than take it right to the final URL, www.yourcompany.com, and now you've got a WordPress site that's in motion and the whole world can see. It's either put into a safeguarded, password protected, and not trackable by web spiders, so that it doesn't start picking up on Google or other search engines. You put it in a secret spot that only your team will be able to access with passwording, and then it gets migrated over. Or in some cases, it literally can be put onto a testing environment within a computer. For instance, all the computers I use, they actually have a simulated server program. I use something called Desktop Server because I really like the way it works. And it fires up WordPress, and only I can see it. But that's the downside. Only I can see it. And then when I'm done, it packages everything up and deploys it to wherever the final place will be.
So that way you can show it to the client, you can take it on your laptop, you can show it to the client, show it to the client, and so it's not live yet. So when they go, oh my God, I hate this, then you can start over.
Correct. Being able to keep a development server on your computer or on your organization's computer means it's not out there on the web, but all the functionality is there, save a couple of things. And the couple of things that are not there are the kind of plugins that track, e-commerce, for instance. You can't do something because it really isn't connected up to the web, or also anti-spam tracking, but you're not going to be getting any comments to your blog anyway. It's software. Desktop server is software. So, one of the final ones in my favorites, because I run across it all the time, is, well, I have this theme, but I also want to be able to do this with it, and I want to be able to do that with it. And, the idea that any theme can be made to be manipulated as far as we want to have a special feature that really is important to us from our business purposes is not true. The more and the further you go into code for things like e-commerce, large media handling, galleries, large data sets, or integration with other items, including things like Salesforce integration and other items like that, the more you push a theme, the more you're opening it up to areas that will break. And when I say areas that will break, it's on two levels. One is it could break visually. The users literally won't see something. But the other, more importantly, is that functions won't work as they should. And those conflicts that arise like that should be avoided. Start by vetting your themes that you might be selecting or migrating towards as carefully as possible. If you're saddled with a theme already and you're starting to see conflicts, this is where to start looking first. It's probably because the theme has really been pushed a lot with additional code, and it wasn't code that was very well constructed. I'm not bashing any developers, but I am saying that if the developer wasn't quite aware of the way the original code was set up and really didn't study that well, little things start happening on line number 675 of PHP file buried way in the site, and it's affecting five pages on the site. So these are things to know about. If you're having conflicts, it might be because things aren't talking to one another. And then the question is always, well, why do I really want to pay for a WordPress theme? I've been around software long enough to remember the days when type fonts used to cost $900 for a set of 5 fonts. Nobody pays $900 anymore. So when WordPress themes are premium at $199, and there was a whole discussion in the WordPress community, by the way, among developer and theme developers of, are we charging too little? There's this whole. They're finally realizing, gee, we got student loans to pay off. Maybe we need to charge more. I'm kind of kidding, but there is this conversation about, are we charging too little for really premium themes? But when I think about the cost, it's really nominal with what you can get for good quality. A lot of free themes out there. They don't have as many options built into them, which means you have to go elsewhere to make up for those shortcomings. If you're doing a blog, you're going to find tons of themes that work for you, but we're not in this room to talk about blogging. We have enterprises to move and businesses to bring leads in and bring clients back with. There's another thing that people don't quite know about or fully understand. Most free themes have within their coding, in a couple of places, backlinks to the developer. Now, is everybody familiar with what backlinks are? Okay. Backlinks on the first level, on the primary level, are a link that goes back and says, this was built by XYZ guy over here. It is a link. It is a link back to them. Most of the time, you see it on the bottom of a preloaded or out of the box WordPress theme, and somebody like me will go in and strip it out, change it, do things like that. But sometimes backlinks get buried in other areas on the code, so that they're getting what's called the juice. They're getting SEO juice back to their site, and it's buried somewhere else where it's invisible to the visitor, but bots and spiders are still there. And that's not so bad. The person developed this thing, they gave it for free, they want to eventually be able to make a living out of this. But there's also one other thing. If they're hiding that, there are things that can come in maliciously. Remember I said earlier, if you get something from WordPress.org, it's been very well vetted. That is true. I've still not heard of a malicious code built into plugins or themes that ever came from there. But there are a lot of other people producing them. And when we're talking about plugins, we're talking about the things that that will put your Yelp crawl. Let's say if you're developing for somebody who has products or services, they might be local, if you will, and they want to have the Yelp crawl on each one of their locations because they get really good 5-star reviews. Some of those Yelp crawl plugins aren't always available from WordPress.org. I always advise people, if you can't get it from WordPress.org, watch it very carefully. That's the place to go. Most of your effective plugins are there.